G'day listeners and welcome back to the Keeper League podcast for season 2023. We're the AFL Fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players that are going to bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Heff and I'm hosting the show solo this year, and tonight I am joined by Tommy Wyman. How you going, mate?
Good, thanks. Great to be here, mate.
Now, Tommy, you've been on the one of the bonus podcasts before for members, but you've never been on the main podcast before. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I love massive footy fan. Have aspirations to be a full-time footy journalist in Melbourne, and so just finished my uni degree and do a bit of writing for Sandful and Rookie Me Central as well. They're the main ones, and then obviously getting a gig on here is nice as well. So
welcome to the Keeper League family, mate.
Yeah, it's great. It's good to be here.
All right, so yeah, like we said before, you're a bit of a rookie expert, but you're also an expert, I guess, or self-proclaimed expert on the Adelaide Crows. So you're a big Crows fan, is that right?
Member 15 years, something like that. Dad signed me up when I was about 6.
Yeah, nice.
So I like to think I know the club really well.
That's good. You meet a lot of Crows fans around Adelaide, but not too many of them are actually members. So right,
fair enough.
The respect goes up in my book for Crows supporters who are actually members of the club. But anyway, I think there might be a bit of tension on here with a Port supporter and an Adelaide supporter on the show. But anyway, we'll see how this goes. Anyway, we're going to do the team review a bit differently this year. In previous years, we picked 6 players each between Kays, Doss and I. This year, we're going to break it up into categories. So we're going to talk about the undervalued players, the breakout contenders, and the stash options. Obviously, excluding the top 150 or so players in the competition. We don't really talk about them. There's also, we're not going to talk about the rookies because we've already done a whole podcast on them as well. So we're not going to spend too much time on rookies unless they come up in affecting other players and things like that. But if you want to learn about the rookies, definitely sign up as a member and grab a hold of that rookie podcast. But we'll get stuck into it straight away. So the first undervalued player for the Crows on my list is Matt Crouch. Now, he could barely get a game last season, only managing 11 games. His fantasy return at the senior level was his lowest since 2015, and 2015 was his second season in the competition, so that's a long time ago. Only averaged 87.9 points per game, but the kind of interesting thing is he averaged 115 points in the Sandful, so prove it that he still can rack them up when he's played in the right roles and given the right jobs. So my question for you, Tommy, is can he make his way back into the side and can he be a fantasy relevant player again?
Well, I'd love to sit here and say yes, he can, because Matt Crouch when he was on is something different. But I think the honest truth is I think it's going to be really hard for him to get back into this side. I think the Crows are really looking to bring on the likes of Soligo, Rachele, Zach Taylor in the midfield now, alongside the already sort of cemented a spot in Berry and the likes like that. I just don't think there's a role for him at the moment. And I think there's a couple that have gone past him. But there's no doubt, like, when he is on, he's brilliant. It's just a shame. I think it's it's a bit sad, actually.
It is a little bit.
He's just fallen off a cliff in the last couple of years. And I think the game's gone past him quicker than some would have thought, maybe.
And I think where the Crows are at, you need to be either like one of those real tough inside movers, or you need to be a skillful player to make it in the Crows midfield at the moment, because that's what they desperately need. And he's not either of those.
Unfortunately, he's not either of them.
Yeah. So that's the vibe I get with Matt Crouch. Would you still draft him though in a draft? Would you take him late just in case he gets a few games later on or gets a chance to prove himself?
Yeah, late.
Yeah,
but I would, because, runs on the board. Look
at someone like Braden Fiorini a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, no one thought he was getting a game. Halfway through the season, he was in and just absolutely smashing it. And he couldn't make you like a run for the finals or whatever. So if you can get him late, you reckon you'd take him?
Well, what if Laird goes down, Berry goes down, he's in.
Yeah. So,
and, if he's given the, number 2, maybe number 3 role in the midfield, then
if there's a few injuries,
he can, no doubt, he can score heavily.
Worth picking up late, but don't go too early on him because his probably best days are definitely over. Next one I want to talk about is Wayne Milera. So missed a lot of football prior to 2022. It was always going to take time for Milera to transition back to the top level. So I'm willing to kind of write off last season a little bit. He looked a bit underdone. And then when he did come back, he played up forward, which is probably not his most, in my opinion, I've said this for years actually, that I think Wayne Milera probably plays his best footy up forward, but he plays his most fantasy-friendly football in defence. So, yeah, basically playing up forward hampers his AFL fantasy scoring, but he's been tipped to move back to the halfback flank where, he does like his best fantasy work, I guess. So do you think that holds? Do you think he can produce a fantasy game? What do you think about Wayne Milera?
I think he's such a frustrating player in that there's so much potential there to be a really good scorer. But it's tough. Like last year, as you say, I think you can pretty much rule a line through it. It was really just about getting runs back into the legs. Like for him, he's had so much time off with injury. But I could see him playing a pretty good role across half back, maybe pushing a high 70s average, maybe into the 80s. But I think half forward is probably out of the question now with Rankine and Rachele, and that forward line for the Crows looks pretty chockers.
Yeah,
so,
he's probably not going back there, eh? So
I can't see him going back up forward, but he's best 22.
Yeah.
He's best 22 when he's on, because he brings a lot of what the Crows don't have in that flashy skill and genuine X factor.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good news for coaches. Like I said, like he plays his best fantasy football in defence. So hopefully he holds that and actually can put up some decent scoring. And he might actually become a handy rebounding defender or something like that as well. Probably, is there a chance for a wing spot as well? Like, 'cause he does play on the wing a little bit.
He could rotate with sort of Dawson. Maybe if Dawson cops a tag, could Milera, could that really help his scoring? Free him up a bit. He could push onto a wing. He's very versatile, so he could do it.
Yeah,
I could see him playing spurts, short, bursts on inside midfield as well.
Yep.
Given his skill set, but I think halfbacks. Yeah, I'd love to see him at halfback from a fantasy perspective.
All right, we'll move on. Another player, he's probably one of your most iconic players in the side at the moment. That's Rory Sloane. He's coming back from injury. Missed most of last season. I think round 4 or 5 he went down with the ACL injury, the dreaded ACL injury. Obviously, his best AFL fantasy days are well behind him, but he's a player I think that could go late in drafts and offer some value. He's a type that could probably get 80 most weeks. And if he's your last picked midfielder, he's the last one you have on field, your M6, M7 type thing, he could be valuable. What do you think?
Well, he can, because he's a good scorer. Like he's proven scorer. But it's going to be tough. It's always tough when you're coming back from an ACL. You just don't know how they're gonna take to footy again. And I think with Sloane, I would like to see him used more away from the midfield, because I think in the last couple of seasons we've started to see him become a little bit of a liability at times.
So where do you think he plays?
He's always going to try his guts out.
Do you think he does like a Pendlebury and goes across the halfback flank or something like that?
I think maybe he doesn't quite have the skill set to play half back. I would use him at half forward.
Like a pressure kind of role. Kind of like what Keys was doing at the end of last year.
I think so, yeah. And if he could switch with Keys, then I think that could work. But
that would probably hamper his scoring, right?
That would hamper his scoring.
Okay.
Yeah, naturally.
Okay, so keep an eye on that one, because if that does, then that does make sense to me. Like he does seem the player that would play that kind of pressure role kind of well. That won't be good for his fantasy scoring. So maybe don't pick him up as your last. Yeah, I mean,
it is still Rory Sloane. Like he's still worth.
He'll work hard all day. That's for sure.
He'll give you 110%.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, so another one that's probably the best days behind him, probably in his last season as well.
You'd think.
Yeah, probably. Another late pickup, but it might be risky, that's all. All right, we'll move on to some breakout contenders now. So, Harry Schoenberg. All right, so last year, Kay's announced that 2022 was his breakout year. It didn't eventuate. All right, so, and there's always been high expectations for Schoenberg. Our listeners love him. They hate it when I write him off. But the thing is he was a really good AFL fantasy scorer at the underage level. He hasn't replicated that at the senior level yet, obviously. And the biggest thing, I guess, is probably his tank, or the obvious thing is his time on ground. He doesn't really spend more than 70% time on ground very often. If you think he can bump this up, I reckon he's a player to jump on board, because he'll get, he does play the right sort of game for fantasy, because he does have that kind of good mix of inside and outside footy. It's just, can he get on the field long enough to actually play it? So the emergence of Sam Berry, I think, really hurt him last year, kind of just overtook him in spades. Jake Soligo was trialled in the midfield at the end, started on the wing, but then went into some CBAs later on in the year. So he's obviously a player that they want to get into the midfield if that's the case. We're talking about Rachele and Rankine probably to do a bit of a split in the middle. We'll talk about that one a bit more later. What do you think? Do you think it's going to be tough for Schoenberg to get a gig in the midfield and take that next step, or do you reckon this year could be his year?
I think he is rated really highly internally, so I think he'll definitely be given a crack. But I think you have seen the likes of Berry and Soligo maybe jump past him, and it's a shame because it happened in one season really where those two have gone straight past him.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating again because I think you hit the nail on the head when you said he's got it in him. Like he can, it looks like a really good fantasy scorer. He's a good extractor, but then you can also use it on the outside as well. I think there's a really good player there, but it's just, I hope he has a big pre-season because I think he needs it because he's a really frustrating player. I think everyone can see the talent's there.
Yeah.
He can be really skillful at times, I think, but it's just about consistency and building up that endurance base for me.
Yeah, hopefully he can get there because he will be a good scorer if he can. It's just, I just worry because that midfield, I know it's that you're still a younger side and you're still struggling a bit in terms of ladder position, but you are starting to build a little bit of midfield depth, and it's just interesting to see where he sits on that depth chart. That's all because, like
it's
I said,
tricky, and I think Berry and Soligo probably sit probably a bit higher at this stage.
Yeah,
which is really
when you add that to Laird and Keys in there as well, I'm probably missing another one as well. But it does push him back to 5th, 6th, kind of in that depth chart.
It's tough,
which does make it difficult to be a good fantasy scorer if that's where you sit. So he's got the potential. Just monitor to see how his time on ground looking in the preseason games and things like that. If he's bumping that up more, could be it. But like I said, he need to get more time on ground and more time in the midfield specifically to bump that, to take the next step. What do you think? Breakout season for Harry Schoenberg, or do you think he struggles? Make the call.
I think he struggles again, unfortunately.
All right. I like person who actually makes that call. That's good. All right. Next one I have a really good feeling about, and that's Riley Thilthorpe. So I'm expecting him to step up next season. So we've predominantly seen him play as a key forward, but from watching him play at the underage level, which I know you've done a fair bit of, we know he's an athletic freak, and I think he'd just be best suited in the ruck, just getting around the ground, jumping at those taps, winning the taps, but also winning his own footy around the ground, playing in as like a, like another midfielder type thing. And we look at the Crows ruck department. So the job security there for both the ruck when they trialled last year is pretty shaky. So Riley O'Brien got dropped last year. Kieran Strawn was given a game, or given 3 or 4 games in a row. So the signs are there that they're not really happy with that ruck department, the way it's actually working. I wouldn't be surprised if Thilthorpe spends a lot more time in the ruck this season. And if you are a person who needs a ruckman in your side, I reckon he's one you should be targeting this year because I think he's an AFL fantasy option when he gets going. What do you reckon? I
100% agree with you in that I think he's a ruckman. We've seen how good he can be as a key forward, but I think that when he plays in the ruck, he is that extra midfielder, and I think that's so important in this modern game. So I think long term, I think he is a ruckman, and I think he offers a lot more than Riley O'Brien. Maybe not yet in the ruck because he's not big enough
size,
yet. And you got to remember, like with these young tools, they will take a while.
Yeah.
And we've already seen plenty of good signs, but he probably does need to take his games in there. This is his 3rd year now on the list, so it is time to start.
Ruckman, you probably can afford a bit more time too. Like generally it's like 24. The good ones tend to break out around then. And
that's why you see so many mature age ruckmen picked up.
Absolutely.
Because it does take a while for them to build their craft and strength and whatnot. But I think Thilthorpe has the potential to be the best ruckman in the comp.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually agree. So I don't know, coming to his 3rd year, I've got him in the breakout because I like to have the 3rd to 4 year players in the breakout category. Might still be a year or 2 away, but I reckon if at the very least pick him up now and stash him because he's going to be a gun, I think. We'll move on to the last one, Izak Rankine. So he's coming into his 5th year in the system. Has the potential to break out in Adelaide, but I just feel like he'll be used too much in the forward line too often to have a fantasy impact. He's going to be so dangerous for you guys up there. I'm expecting an average in the 70s playing up forward, kicking a few goals, getting a little bit of a run in the midfield. What do you think?
Yeah, I think some Crows fans probably need to hit the brakes a little bit on the midfield call.
Okay.
I just don't know if he's going to be able to play that many midfield minutes. And I don't know if I'd really want him to play that many midfield minutes, to be honest, because given how dangerous he can be inside forward 50, I think it's not wasted in the midfield, but I think it could be better used up forward, to be honest. I think the natural, when you get a player in that's a forward, and it's sort of happening with Rachele, who we'll touch on in a second as well, like the natural want is for them to push into the midfield, but sometimes they're just best as forwards. And I think that's the case with Rankine. But an average in the 70s for him is probably about right, I'd say.
Yeah, I think some of the frustration, I guess, comes, I don't know if you'd call it frustration, but you look at like a player like Tyson Stengel, who is like a small forward, plays a pretty similar role, I guess, picked up from nowhere, becomes all Australian. And it seems to happen a lot in AFL that these smaller forwards kind of just come out of nowhere. They're not necessarily high draft picks, but because Rankine was a pick 3, wasn't he? That everyone has this expectation that he should go into the midfield and be as good as a midfielder. But maybe he's just rated on how good he is as a forward, and he's going to be one of the best small forwards in the competition. Maybe getting away from Gold Coast. I don't know if Crows are that much of an improvement, but I'm kind of the same opinion that maybe we shouldn't be trying to push him into the midfield too much. But I think he might be a guy who could average 70 in your forward line. But he's in the breakout category because he's in that right time of his career. So he needs to do something big if he's ever going to be a fantasy scorer this season. So I don't see it happening.
No, I can't see him being super fantasy relevant, but I can see him
being
hopefully lighting up Adelaide Oval similar to what Eddie Betts did when he was here.
Look, if a forward's averaging 70 this year, you're going to have to, as you've F5 in your last spot, like if you've got someone who can average 70, that's going to be an absolute ripper.
That's pretty good. You take that.
Yeah, because if you look at the forward list, there's not a lot of depth there. So, don't expect the world, but he should be handy for you anyway. We're going to move on to the stash options now. So these are players that I think we should hold for a couple of years. There might be 2 or 3 more years before they become super fantasy relevant. Very similar player to Izak Rankine. That's Josh Rachele. So he was an absolute underage jet. I think, was he pick 5 last year? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Definitely top 10.
Yeah, he was definitely in there.
Quite what pick.
I just think he needs another year. I know the Crows did use him at the centre bounces a bit last year. It kind of shows to me that they want to give him a bit of midfield time as well. And he might be the one who kind of either with Rankine rotates through or probably spends a bit more time in the midfield this year. What do you think, Josh Rachele?
I think I see more midfield potential in Rachele than Rankine. I think, he won the might have been the best player at the under-16 National Carnival for Vic Country as a midfielder.
Yep.
And he averaged really good numbers in that carnival as well. So he can do it. But I think he's still a forward that can play in the midfield, in my eyes, rather than a midfielder that can go forward. I think, he does need more time. He showed some really good signs at the start of last year, but he did fade, and it's to be expected of a first-year player. Anyone is expected, unless you're Nick Dacos. But hopefully we see him sort of pinch hit a little bit more often, and hopefully it's not in the last 3 rounds. Hopefully I hope the Crows use him all throughout the year in the midfield.
So you think there's a chance he lines up round 1, gets, maybe 20-30% of the CBAs? Do you reckon that happens?
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it happens, but I'd love to see it. I think maybe 10 to 15% is more realistic.
Yep. All right, cool. That's still pretty handy for a forward if you can run through the middle and get a few kicks that way. So and that's good signs for the future. That's why I reckon maybe stash him for this year and then hopefully can bump up to that 20-30% type thing. That is quite high, but we'll see how he goes going forward. Another one I think we should stash is Jake Soligo. So a lot of people probably would want to have him in the breakout side of things for this year, but I think we just got to pump the brakes on this guy a little bit as well. He did show some good signs last year, but there's often a bit of second year blues and that type of thing, and I think he will spend more time on the outside than he will on the inside. I know people pretty get excited with the CBAs he got last year, but I still think he spends a bit more time on the wing and maybe moves inside in the future. So for that reason, I'm going to say stash him for another year. Don't expect huge things from him, but he's definitely a talent. Do you agree?
I 100% agree. He's easily one of my favourite players.
In terms of his role, though, this year, do you agree on that? That's more...
Yeah, I think more outside, definitely. More outside. As much as I love to say, 50-50 split, I think maybe his entire career will be sort of mainly outside leaning slightly, perhaps. But, he's got the skills that can go into the inside role, but he's only smaller.
Yeah.
He is quite slight at this stage especially, so he definitely needs another couple of years before he moves up into the top echelon, but there's definitely signs there. I'm really excited by him.
He was a good junior fantasy scorer from memory, wasn't he?
He was pretty handy. He was a solid scorer.
Yeah. So he's got a fantasy game there. He's probably a bit more tailored to the outside at AFL level, so don't expect the huge kind of 110 averages one day, but could be a solid 85 to 90 guy one day.
I think so. I think that's more his range,
I just don't see it's happening this year, that's all. So stash for the future. You've been keeping eyes on Patrick Parnell. Well, how's he looking? Has he been hitting the gym or what's the go?
Jeez, you'd hope so. I can't really talk, but he got a few laughs when he sort of made his debut last year.
I think the funny one was someone compared him to the Oz kicker that ran out with the team or whatever.
It's like the poor bloke, and he can't do anything about it. But I think there are some good signs there, though. to be honest. I think he's got good skill set. I think he's a Luke Brown replacement.
Yeah.
But
so a bit more defensive.
But I think maybe he can offer a little bit more offensive than Luke Brown. Luke Brown was very dour.
Yeah.
But I think Parnell probably offers a bit more the other way. But I think he start, whether he's best 22 at this stage is tough. Yeah. I'd say he's definitely a chance. He's definitely a chance.
Needs to hit the gym for anher year.
Yeah,
and then
or 2 or 3. Yeah. But I think
so. He's looking like Finn McRae on the poster behind you. Pipes like that, maybe.
there's something to work with there. I think he's got. He was touted as having one of the best kicks in his draft year, missed out, and then picked up as a mid-season pick.
Yeah.
I think there's something to work with there.
Yeah, like from what I saw, it looked like he had a fantasy game. Like the body's just not there yet. That's all. He needs to kind of build that up.
Yeah, the body hasn't quite kept up with his skills maybe at this stage. But
needs to get to that kind of AFL size, and then once that happens, I reckon there's something there.
Yeah.
The last one I'll talk about, I think he's still a stash option, is Luke Pedlar. So he was a good underage fantasy scorer. Comes into his third season of AFL. I think he's playing quite a different role than he was playing at underage season. So a lot of our listeners love him or love the idea of him because he was such a good underage scorer. He's playing more as a forward, though, for the Crows in the SNFL side. That probably doesn't equate to as much good fantasy scoring. And do you see that's where he would play when he comes into the senior side?
Yeah, I think if he's to play, I think he's more a forward that can go into the midfield at this stage.
Yeah.
But I think, to be honest, we've seen some of his best footy. He was awesome for the Crows in the Sanford finals. Like, really, really good. Almost best. I think he was best on ground in the prelim.
Yeah. I didn't see it. Was that playing up forward or playing in the midfield?
So I think he may have missed the prelim, but the game before, he played more midfield and was... I reckon he was best on ground.
Yeah, okay.
To be honest.
So there is some midfield potential there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I think, injuries have not helped him at all. He's sort of been cruelled by injuries so far in his short career. But if he can get a good run at it, I think he can be really... he's what the Crows need in the midfield because he brings that explosive contested ball.
Yeah, they've got a lot of... Yep.
The Laird's a great contested ball winner, but he's not explosive.
Yep.
Whereas Pedlar brings that real burst speed. He's actually quite a penetrating kick as well, which, again, we don't really have in the midfield. So I really hope he comes on because he has sort of the skill set that we really need.
Yep.
But, unfortunately, I think he is more of a forward if he comes into that side.
Yeah. And so, maybe hold on for a couple of years till a few of the kind of older heads move out a little bit. And then
he's one to watch.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Once that midfield develops, you might see Laird go back to a halfback flank eventually and things like that.
Exactly.
So, in 2 or 3 years' time type of thing. And there'll be more space for these kind of younger types to run through there. So, that's all I've got there. You didn't have any addition to those. We've got a few questions come out, which we'll touch on a few.
I think we've covered most there.
All right. Awesome. So we'll move on to the listener questions in a second, but I just want to read out the 10 gold members as a thank you for signing up as a gold member and supporting the podcast. We'll read your name out on the show. So thank you to Josh Hart, Rob Hall, Harley Philp, James Richardson, Joshua Hutchinson, Russell Beasley, Michael Boland, Dave Simpson, Nicholas Westerman, and Alina Herman. Thank you to those gold members for supporting the show this season. All right, listener questions. The first one, at Jakey the Mac. Would love to get your thoughts on Andrew McPherson. He was killing it this time last year and was on 40 at quarter time before he was injured in round 1. Never to be seen again. Do you think he's best 22 if fit round 1?
Oh, I think it's borderline. I think the spot might be him or Parnell, to be honest.
He got delisted, but then re-rookie.
Yeah,
right?
he's struggled.
That's never a good sign.
He's struggled with injury.
Yeah,
I think soft tissue injuries have really cruelled him, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's a player I've always loved.
I don't think he is best 22.
Yeah, I think it's never a good sign when they drop you and re-rookie.
I don't think he's best 22.
Yeah. Potential there if he does get in that. If Crows are out of it, they might just give him one last chance to save his save his career type thing. So maybe worth picking up off the waivers or something like that if that does happen. But probably not seeing too much straight up for me anyway. At Warner Brothers AFL, which of the Crows mids goes to the next level? Laird and Keys are relatively consistent, but who of Berry, Soligo, Schoenberg, Pedlar gets a promising role and can take that next step?
Well, I hope all of them can take the next step, but I think the one out of them would be Berry.
Yeah.
I think he's got the body to take him to the next level, and especially fantasy-wise. I think, he's got a fantasy game because he tackles.
I didn't even include him in this podcast because he's there for me. Like, he's broken out type thing. So,
I think he can get a lot better next year. And I think, he's the one for me. But I would love to see Schoenberg take his game to the next level as well. I just not sure it's going to happen.
At Russ with a bunch of numbers after it. Have you heard anything on Rankine's role? Surely not paying 100K to not play a midfield role. We did touch on that before. I haven't heard anything really about role. I just heard that there might be a chance of a split, forward with some smattering of midfield time. That's all I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we can hope for too many midfield minutes, but I think we'll definitely see him in the midfield at times, but it won't be for long, I don't think.
Yeah. Next one comes from Matthew Wright. Is Butts a 40 averaging player for his whole career? Do you think Butts has got... Yeah, so do I. Yeah. So do you think Butts has anything else? He's a lockdown, taller defender.
I mean, I really like...
He's a good player.
Butts. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think he's ever going to be a
full
fantasy
back for the next 10 years, hopefully, but no.
Yeah.
He's not going to average... He's a bit like Daniel Talia in that regard.
Anyway, Harley Philp asks, why have I held Haitley this long? Please convince me. So I was thinking about bringing him into the show, but I thought I'd leave it for this question. What's the go with Haitley? So looked really good when he was in the midfield, got turfed out to a wing and didn't score as well. Then eventually got dropped again, I think. Yeah. Back to the sample. So what's the go there?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard with Haitley because he's sort of one of those players that's sort of good at everything but not great at anything. Like, he doesn't have, for me, like a standout trait that makes you go, wow, this really improves the side. I hate to say bland, but it's sort of, he is a vanilla player. Yeah. And I don't know if there's like a role that he goes, oh yeah, that's his role.
Yeah.
Like, he can sort of, he's a bit of a Band-Aid sort of player.
As a junior, he played on the halfback flank a bit more.
He's played half forward, wing, inside mid. I mean, he's got the body.
I just feel like he should just sit on that halfback flank and be trialled there because I think that would suit him the best. But just, I don't know, they seem to throw him around in everything, trying to get him somewhere and he doesn't seem to get there. But I don't know, at AFL level, we just don't seem to see him in defence very often. But
no, I mean, I don't know if he has the skill set to be a real damaging halfback.
Yeah, that's true.
It must be frustrating for him.
Is he in your best 22?
No, he's not.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But I think he'll average really good score
when he plays. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And if he gets a game at AFL level, there's a chance he runs up and down that wing all day.
If he's given a decent role, I think
who are your starting wings in your best 22? Then you have Soligo. And who's on the other side?
Soligo and Dawson.
Dawson on the wing.
But I think Dawson. It's so tough with Dawson because he can play anywhere. But I'd have him on a wing, rotating with Smith or Milera. Yeah. But then so Haitley sort of. If there's injuries, for sure. Yeah, but, not at this stage.
All right. Stuart Ward has just written Zach Taylor ? Now, I don't know a heap about him. I know he's like a nuggety little redhead midfielder, pretty hard at it.
Yeah.
Why we got... You mentioned him actually earlier in the show, I noticed. What's the go with Zach Taylor? I don't know a lot about him.
I really like Zach Taylor. Okay. I think he's going to be a really good player. I think we'll see him at some stage this year. Might not be round one, but I think we'll get a look at him at AFL level at some stage, but it will probably, I'm almost certain it'll be as a forward, because I think it's very rare for us to throw a midfielder straight into the midfield. We've done it recently with Berry and Soligo, but before that we just never used to do it. But I really like Taylor. He's actually a very classy player. Can kick right and left. Finds the ball really well. Great vision, really good vision. So I think there's definitely something to work with there. I think. In a couple of years' time, we'll see him definitely take a full-time mid-role. All
right, put that one in the black books. Zach Taylor. Tommy likes that one. Joe Downey's asking, Paul Seedsman, any essay goss on his availability and training? I think he's just seeing out his contract, isn't he?
He's got nothing for you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately...
He was another one that got re-rookied,
Yeah,
right?
he was re-rookied. But I think... It's sort of a lost cause.
I saw him was featuring in a celebrity golf day or something coming up.
Maybe that's... I think you'd see a bit more of that. I just can't see him playing AFL footy again, which is a real... Or footy at all, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I think it's probably
a really
not
bad
worth,
injury.
It's not worth the risk for him to actually come back.
It's not... Given your age, if you're 21, maybe you give it a crack, but he'd be pushing 30 now.
Sadly, probably done, unfortunately.
Which is a shame because a couple of years ago, he was... arguably all-Australian wingman.
He was great on the wing. Yeah, and decent in fantasy too.
Yep,
so a lot of people, he's sitting on a lot of people's lists waiting for his comeback, but I don't think you're going to get it, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly.
Anyways, that's a wrap. Thanks, Tommy, for coming on the show again.
It was great. Good to talk. footy.
And
Good for Crows.
we'll probably hear you more throughout the season as well. Definitely keen to have you on a bit more often as a recurring guest. So that'd be good to have you. Anything you want to plug? Anything you're doing the next few months? Anything you're writing for or working for?
Rookie me will start ramping up soon.
Yep.
We'll get pre-season and we'll start talking to players at the pre-season combine. So that'll be good. Really good draft crop as well this year. So
wow,
I'm keen
that's
to
exciting.
talk. Really good draft crop.
All right, well, we might keep an eye on that throughout the year as well.
Absolutely.
Might have a mid-season draftee potential wrap or something like that.
Yep.
Anyways, that's a wrap for us. So check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, at Keeper League Pod on all of those platforms. Also, please support the podcast by becoming a member. Can't keep this thing running each week without the members' support. So thank you to those who have signed up. And if you wish to jump on and support, please do that at keeperleaguepod.com.au. There's a link in the description below. Also, though, if you can't commit financially, that's fine. That's all good. But you could really help us out just by subscribing on YouTube, following us on Twitter, retweeting our stuff, giving us a like on Facebook, all that sort of stuff as well. All that stuff goes a long way. So thank you to all the listeners out there that support us. All right, I will be back in a couple days talking to a guest who knows a bit about the Brisbane Lions. So stay tuned for that one. See you later.